The mountains woke in shades of amber and rose, their peaks kissed by the first light of morning. Dust swirled along the narrow path where a young woman trudged, her skirts ragged, her eyes hollow with disbelief. Eliza Mae Caldwell had known betrayal long before the cold wind cut through her hair. Her own family had deemed her useless, their hands passing her like a ledger entry, sold to strangers with no regard for her trembling heart. The wagon wheels creaked like mournful sighs, and she could feel the weight of her father's indifference pressing into her back, heavier than the bundle she clutched to her chest. In her ears, the whispers of her mother and stepmother lingered, sharp and unyielding, while the wind itself seemed to carry their cruelty, whispering it over the pine trees that surrounded her. Every step she took on the rough, uneven road was a question, each one echoing, would anyone ever see her? Would anyone ever care? By midday, the small frontier town loomed like a specter, dusty streets empty except for the townsfolk who watched her with pointed stares. She offered her labor, scrubbing floors, washing clothes, assisting in the saloon, but each attempt was met with rejection, sharp laughter, and sneers that branded her as the sold girl of the mountains. Hunger gnawed at her, cold wrapped around her bones like chains, and yet she walked on. She walked on because the wind whispered promises of survival, carrying her small defiance like a fragile banner. Each day became a quiet testament to resilience, her spirit bending but never breaking, even as the world around her sought to diminish her worth. When her feet finally brought her to the edge of the mountains, exhaustion settled like a heavy cloak over her shoulders. The pine-scented air smelled faintly of smoke, and in the distance she saw it, a solitary cabin perched among the ridges, thin lines of smoke curling from its chimney into the blue sky. Hesitant, she approached, wary of both hope and disappointment. The door opened to reveal a man whose presence was quiet, steady, and commanding all at once. Silas Granger was a mountain man, his hands calloused from labor, his eyes sharp but gentle, scanning her without judgment. Without a word, he extended a loaf of bread, the scent of warmth and possibility filling the cold air. She accepted it, trembling, and for the first time in weeks, she felt the fragile stirrings of safety. Life at the cabin unfolded with slow, deliberate care. Eliza tended the small garden, swept the cabin floor, and cooked over the hearth, while Silas worked silently outside, repairing fences or chopping wood. Their connection was not declared in words, but in gestures. A glance lingered a heartbeat too long. A hand brushed against hers as they carried water. The quiet sharing of tasks that spoke louder than any confession. Laughter occasionally broke through, soft and shy like sunlight through storm clouds. And in these small moments, Eliza felt her sense of self return. Her worth no longer dictated by those who had cast her aside, but forged in the quiet approval of someone who saw her entire being. The town remained a shadow, a reminder of the world she had left behind. Rumors spread, as they always do, growing into exaggerated tales of scandal. A woman rescued by the mountain man, whispers that grew sharp and cutting. Her father and stepmother eventually arrived, their greed and arrogance undimmed by the journey. They demanded her return, speaking in the tone of men who believed their authority was absolute, their voices carrying the weight of past betrayals. Silas did not raise his voice. He did not brandish weapons. He merely stood by her side, a steadfast wall of quiet strength. And in that moment, Eliza realized the depth of her courage. She spoke her truth, calm and unwavering, confronting those who had tried to sell her life like a commodity. Pride and fear tangled within her, yet dignity shone brighter. And the mountain wind seemed to lift her words, carrying them into the ridges where only the eagle dared to soar. Her father and stepmother left defeated, their power over her broken at last. Silence followed, thick and fragrant with the scent of pine and earth. A quiet celebration of victory not won with guns or fists, but with resilience and the courage to claim one's own worth. Silas and Eliza stood together at the threshold of the cabin, the glow of the hearth warming their faces. No grand declarations were necessary. A shared fire, a hand extended in quiet connection, the slow curve of a smile. These were enough. Love, it seemed, was not always thunderous. Sometimes it was the steady pulse of care, the persistence of presence, the gentle acts that spoke of belonging. Evening draped the mountains in gold and violet, the sky vast and endless above them. Smoke curled from the cabin chimney, carrying the scent of home into the night air. Birds settled among the pine boughs, small animals returned to the garden they had nurtured together, and a life once fragile and discarded now breathed with quiet strength. Eliza Mae Caldwell, once deemed useless, now walked with dignity and self-respect, her spirit intertwined with that of the man who had offered her shelter, understanding, and the subtle promise of love. Sometimes, life sells us cheaply to those who cannot see our value. Sometimes salvation comes not in thunderous gestures, but in the quiet persistence of a hand extended in kindness. Perhaps it is in the small moments, the shared fire, the whispered encouragement, the work done side by side, that we find our true worth. And as the mountains settle into shadow and the wind carries the soft secrets of the ridges, remember this: dignity is forged in resilience, connection blooms through quiet grace, and even the most abandoned soul can find a home. Look to the mountains, to the steadfast cabin, to the heart that sees you, and know that even in the wildest, loneliest places, life has a way of returning hope to those who have waited long enough to believe it is possible.